Well, hello and welcome to episode 457 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. My name's Neville Bounds and welcome to everybody that's watching us on YouTube or is listening to us as an audio download. In the show this week, we look at the demise of Virgin Orbit. We pay another visit to the Museum of Flight at East Fortune, where Carlos and I went a few weeks ago. And in the military, Armando discusses the EF16 Hornet that crashed in Spain recently, but the pilot was fortunate enough to be able to eject to safety. Joining me this week on the show are, well, Matt Smith,
Hello.
who did such a sterling job last week on his own, but with a very good super substitute in the form of Captain Jeff.
I mean, you don't get one that's there's no better super sub, is there? So it's like, I mean, you know, on my own is not really true, is it? When you could put Captain Jeff in charge and we'd be fine. It'd be 3.5 hours long, but it'd be fine. How are you, Nev? You all right?
Yes, very well, thank you. Just back from a week in the Algarve, which was very pleasant indeed, but not without its difficulties, which I'll perhaps talk about a bit later on. Yes, we're just waiting for Carlos and Armando to show up. So maybe I'll talk about some of the events that happened on my flight, or before the flight, and at the end of the flight.
Really?
Shall I talk about that now?
Sounds quite eventful. Yeah, let's. With the as I say, the guys are now joining us. They're a little bit delayed from their dinner plans, basically, but they'll be with us shortly. They're just sorting themselves out now. So, Nev, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So, it was the Algarve that you went to then with Mrs. Nev as part of a little jolly, was it? A little holiday?
Tripette, yes, yeah. And it was very nice. But the first thing was that they had swapped the flight from Terminal 3 to Terminal 5 to Faro without actually telling anybody. Luckily, I just happened to check a couple of days before, so I adjusted the car park and all the rest of it. Now, people that know me hopefully know that I'm a polite young man, and I don't tend to lose my rag or be too sarcastic with people. I do give people the benefit of the doubt where I can, but I was extremely cross during the boarding process. Firstly, I'd arrived with Mrs. Nev at the Group 1 board. I was right at the front. You could not get any further to the front, as it were. The 1A position.
Of course, yes.
And this lady just comes steaming literally almost through me and says, "I'm in Group 1. And I couldn't help myself by saying to her, "And where do you think you're going?" As she barged her way through. Was not happy about that at all. And then, just in case I wasn't cross enough, BA did their usual business of, let's ask everybody that's got a wheelie bag to board first, because we haven't got enough room in the cabin. Now, this delays the boarding procedure considerably, as you can imagine. So we've now got, I nearly said something very bad there, people who are older than me not knowing what to do. Okay. And we've now got 30 people with their carry-on luggage checking it all in at the gate. And we've got the fella who is trying to organise all this, barking orders at everybody. Right. And, of course, that delays the flight. Once we get on the flight, I look above the where the bags are, you know, the cabin baggage area, and there's plenty of space. So they checked in 35 cases where they needn't have done that. And, of course, these cases aren't that big. They're the small, sort of minimalist size ones. And they've told them to check them in. It's just mad. And this happened on a previous occasion. I was going to Edinburgh, I think it was, and the captain comes steaming up the jetway, asking what the
hold-up
heck is going on. As he's about to miss his slot.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, absolutely. So forgive my naivety here, Nev. So in this scenario, because obviously whenever I've checked in baggage, obviously I've had to go to a check-in desk and all that kind of thing. So they're doing this at like the boarding gate, essentially.
Yeah, but they've got bags which are perfectly fine and legal in terms of the size and the weight and all the rest of it. And of course, this just causes a whole load of delay. And if I'm going to sound like a snob now, I apologise in advance, but people like me that spend an awful lot of money with the airline, and the whole point of Group 1 boarding is you get priority boarding. Yeah. I'm now waiting for 30 people in front of me to board the aircraft. And yet, on the way back from Faro, absolutely no problem at all. They don't want you to check it in. It's the same airline, obviously different boarding staff and all the rest of it. And there's plenty of room. It's just ridiculous. So,
be intrigued to know. I mean, because obviously the captain is ultimately responsible for the actual aircraft. Obviously, once it's once people are on board and all that kind of thing. But who has jurisdiction when the passengers are still in the terminal?
Well, I think it's the boarding agents, basically. And in the case of Heathrow, it's BA's staff themselves. Right. But I have to say, the gentleman that was organising it, and I'm putting that in inverted commas, was a very officious young fellow. Okay. And he really needs to go on a politeness course, because he's not ticked any of those boxes whatsoever. Well, of course,
if you get people's backs up, of course, they're not inclined to get stuck.
And I said to a couple of ladies that were about to check their bag, and I said, I wouldn't do that if I was you. I said, because last time I did that, we lost our luggage for 3 days.
Oh, wow. Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, dear.
It just sort of adds to the difficulty of getting onto the aircraft.
I bet.
I certainly can't speak for like every airline, but the one that I used to work at, that was a very specific point of contention as to who takes the delay. Is it maintenance, operations, or the pilots?
Oh yeah, true. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, because I guess delays are attributed, like responsibility or blame, for want of a better word, is usually attributed to one of those parties.
Well, and you can imagine that the bean counters are very much tracking which department in the airline is taking the most delays.
Wow. Okay. Goodness.
Well, obviously, I've sent an email in. Explaining my displeasure at it all. But of course, they got me back in the end, because when I went back to the T5 car park, the battery was completely dead in my car, and I had to get the roadside assistance folks. So I got home at 3 a.m. Just to get up at 4:30 in the morning to go and do our new office opening in Brighton for the company, which I was delighted to do, but I was a bit short of sleep, so I was running on caffeine for most of the day, and I don't think I've fully recovered yet. So
I bet.
Appear a little jaded, then I do apologise for that.
I'm not surprised. Sounds like a bit of a horrific experience. Well, as you've probably noticed there, our Armando has joined us, which means somewhere around him, not a million miles away, there should be someone else who is usually on the podcast. Are you there, Mr. Stebbings?
Yes, I'm here. Hopefully you can hear me, Matt.
I can indeed. If you could just turn your gain down a little tiny bit, that would be very, very helpful.
We can do.
Yeah. You're not doing... are you sure it's supposed to be that way round? Is it not supposed to be... Oh,
yes,
right,
I've not done a Captain Nick.
Oh, well, I was just wondering.
Is that right? Or do you want a bit more?
I don't know. We've got a bit of a weird echo going on there, but I'm sure it'll settle down as the echo cancelling gets the hang of it. Yes, so you're in the States, somewhere very close to Armando, I believe.
Yeah, just sitting across the garden from him.
Right. Okay, very good.
Literally, quite literally. He's there.
Is he? Right, okay. Love it. Love it. So, what have you been up to?
What haven't we been up to, I think, is the question. You know, from the minute I touched down here on Saturday, I literally have been non-stop, flying, driving, flying, with a bit more flying on top. But it's all been fantastic. And in between the flying, I jumped out of a plane.
Right. Okay. I mean, we'll gloss over that bit and move on. The it's so. Yes. Well. So yes. As you know, obviously Carlos is there having the time of his life. I think is the best way to describe it.
Certainly.
Having an awful time by the sound of it. It's Nev. Are you up for jumping out of a plane?
No, definitely not. No, I must say, you know, the people that choose to do that, including our good friend Captain John Hutchinson, formerly of the Concorde fleet, he did that as well over in the Isle of Wight, and he said it was one of the best things that he'd ever done.
Wow.
But in the same breath, he said it was a bloody stupid idea. So
Okay, fair enough.
I'm sure there's differences of opinion about that. But the people that do it, are good on them.
They seem to enjoy it.
I will not be doing that. No.
So having done it now, Carlos, do we have a Dr. Steph style addiction to it now? Are we desperate to do it again?
Carlos is doing a quick technical update, but
Okay.
I can guarantee you that based on the smile he had, yeah, he's probably going to do it again.
Okay, right, fair enough. All right, so it's not the last time he'll do it. He'll probably be jumping out of Stuart's plane, I guess, now over at the over in Beccles here.
Well, now he's got to take Gemma too,
Well, right, okay, yeah. Good luck with that. Is all I'm saying
Well,
on that.
is this a good time? I mean, aside from the skydiving story, because we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I think is probably a good time to talk about the
Guys, I'm gonna ask you to sort of cut off and try and sort out your audio issues, unfortunately, because there's a really awful echo that we're struggling with a bit here. So I don't know quite whether it might be worth you guys sharing one microphone, perhaps. But yeah, we've got a bit of an echo going on there that's making it difficult for us to understand you. Let's see. While we're sorting that out, actually, Armando, we've got a couple of videos, I think, that we have to share with everyone. What's going to be good to play first?
Well, one of the adventures that we had was the Flying Horseman Ranch, and that led to a little bit of an adventure at the end of the trip. So it's a little bit of a, I think, 20-minute video. So if you want to play that out, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
Okie dokie, let's go.
All right, here we go. All right, good power. Get the tail up.
Federal traffic, Piper 56798, transitioning midfield west to east, Federal traffic.
All right, we're recording.
Hey!
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Armando.
What are we doing?
Well, we're flying the Cub. Well, I'm flying the Cub, hands flying.
I'm hands-free.
Hand flying. And Armando's not holding on for dear life.
Nope.
No. I am essentially the autopilot at the moment.
That's right. He's a pretty good autopilot.
Like Otto from Airplane.
Yeah, so we are flying up. We just left, more or less, Concord, North Carolina, outside of Charlotte. We're going to fly up to the Flying Horseman Ranch fly-in. Point the nose down just a smidge.
Just a smidge, coming down.
It is a 3-day. We're only going for 2 days, 1 night. Fly-in and camp. We'll take pictures and video, obviously, when we get up there. But, yeah, they're going to have food, bands, barbecue, breakfast. Should be a bunch of vintage airplanes flying in. We are one of them. This is a 1946.
1946. Honestly, this aircraft is so nice. Apart from the fact it's blue, and blue is my favourite colour. It's just stunning. For those of you who watch the show, you'll probably seen Armando put pictures of the aircraft, the little Cub on the show. But until you see it in person, you just can't appreciate how nice this aircraft is to look at. And it's so well looked after. You would not expect this aircraft to have been from 1940s at all.
Yeah, it's almost like a warbird with the way it's been refurbished. I didn't do it. The previous owner refurbished the airplane, really restored it in 2012, I believe. And this is a pretty mint, nice paint job, new fabric. Strangely enough, I think I've mentioned it on the show. It is an IFR certified Super Cub. So we've got a full IFR panel in here. And this is one of those days. Carlos and I had a good risk management conversation before getting on the airplane. Clouds are right about 2,500 MS or AGL for the ceilings, which is fine because we're cruising around at 1,000 feet, and that gives us plenty of safe altitude as well as clearance from the clouds above. to maintain our legal VFR cloud clearances. But to be honest, it's actually pretty smooth down here at 1,000 feet AGL, and we're just going to go at 1,000 feet all the way up to Virginia and land at a pretty challenging strip. We'll see if we can get some video of that. If not, we'll borrow somebody else's video. But it's a challenging little airstrip, grass strip on a slope surrounded by trees. But the best part's just going to be hanging around and camping with people, like-minded people with tail draggers and vintage airplanes.
Oh yeah.
So we will, I suppose, check in from the Flying Horseman Ranch here in a couple hours.
Yeah.
Good job. I'm still hands-free.
Hey, everybody. Well, we are driving. We both got our lucky underwear on. Before we get to the in-flight emergency portion of the story, what did we just do? So we last check-in, the last part of this video, we were flying up to the Flying Horseman Ranch.
We were, yeah.
Carlos, do tell. I do this all the time. So what was your impression of the Flying Horseman Ranch and the community?
It's like nothing you've ever been to before in the UK, for one. So imagine a huge field, a grass strip. How long? 2,200
feet. I don't know. That's like 7 meters or something, kelvins.
But we're not talking about a grass strip which is level, flat. We're talking about a grass strip that goes like this. But anyway, got in. There was a number of aircraft in, already parked up. A lot of people were staying for the night, camping there. But all day it was like having your own personal air show with food as well, supplied by the family. And someone in the back wants to service. So yeah, we had lots of lovely food while we were there. We met loads of great people as well.
Yeah.
Made lots of new friends of the show while we were there. Which was
introduced some people to the podcast.
Yes, we did. Yeah. And the weather was the best. The weather was so good. You could not have wished for better weather for the whole event.
Yeah. And it was dubious at first because the day we were supposed to go up on Saturday morning, it was 2,500 foot ceilings, but that turned out to be just fine. That gave us all our, I think we mentioned it on the previous video, but it gave us all the necessary cloud clearances, but it actually made it a little smooth going up there. Not a lot of thermals, not a lot of turbulent air, and we just flew up at 1,000 feet above the ground, all the way to Virginia. It was what, about an hour total flight?
Yeah.
Before anything, I guess shout out to the Landis family.
Yeah.
It truly a family affair. The Richard Landis was the owner of the property who put this on. He and his wife own a Great Lakes biplane, open cockpit biplane, a Cessna 180, and an Aranca Champ, and it's their property. It is the Flying Horseman because there are actually horses on the ranch. And they had all their aunts and uncles. Dan was the son who we were communicating with.
Yeah.
To coordinate logistics of going in there. This was just put on by a family for no benefit to themselves. The food was all free and included
chilled, ice cold chilled bottles of water.
24/7.
24/7.
Rented porta potties. They had a movie night on Friday night. They played The Rocketeer. Honestly, I would say the food, the people, and the impromptu air show were my highlights. Really amazing just to expose Carlos to the really tight-knit general aviation community. But by tight-knit, I suppose I mean you can be a stranger, but you're only a stranger until you shut down your engine. And then you're in. You can come over to these people's houses for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. That's how friendly everybody seemed to be. And our neighbors had an RV6 and an RV7. They flew in from New York, from around the city, and then on the other side, our camping neighbor, was a Carbon Cub, I believe local, but it was just this really cool little community, I would say. It was just fun talking to all the people.
Yeah, we camped last night
How was that?
under the trees in a hammock, which I haven't done probably for about at least 25, 26 years since I last slept in a hammock. But it was nice, apart from that, the frogs. The frogs.
Oh, fireflies.
And the fireflies. I've finally seen fireflies in the wild. And at first, I did have to say, didn't I? I did think, what's going on in the hedge line? Is someone messing around with lights, LEDs? No, fireflies. And someone managed to catch a firefly in his hand, which is pretty damn cool.
All right, that was another highlight, was Carlos seeing fireflies for the first time. And it was exactly what you would picture. We were sleeping in the hammocks, it's dark, and then as soon as the sun went down, it was just the whole forest, it was like a magical forest, lit up with fireflies or lightning bugs, whatever you want to call them. And it really was just magical. The moonlight was just peeking through the clouds. The fireflies were all lit up, and the only sounds were the occasional airplane that would buzz even at dusk. Very cool though.
Yeah, it was very good. It was awesome. And again, like Armando said earlier, you know, this family laid on this whole weekend free. You know, they ask obviously for donations, which is cool, but all the food, the drink, the hospitality, it's free. Yeah.
And then, so we took off this morning, met up, we had breakfast because they provided eggs, bacon,
this morning,
and pancakes. And our plan, because it was such a short strip, I had purposely, we had less than half tanks of fuel. So the plan was to pop over from this tiny little farm strip over to Blue Ridge Airport, Kilo Mike Tango Victor, get some fuel there. Funny enough, our neighbors actually followed us over there in the RVs. We got some fuel, no issues there. And then on the way home, we decided to, just to take advantage of the winds, go up to 4,500 feet, which is pretty high for us.
Good, yeah.
Right. Usually I fly around everywhere at 1,000 feet. About 30 minutes into the flight, what did I say, Carlos?
Armando said from the flight deck, the oil pressure has dropped. It's getting low. And it was. I could see from my seat the oil pressure gauge, and it had dropped from the green area into the orange.
Into the yellow, yeah.
In the yellow, yeah. So something wasn't quite right. And immediately Armando went into, you know, plan mode, and you instantly went on to, was it 4-flight or no? What's that you use?
Yeah, I had 4-flight up for navigation, VFR navigation, similar to Sky Demon if you're in the UK. And I knew our path on the way down there, and immediately, like Carlos said, once I saw the oil pressure dropping, and it was steadily dropping, it wasn't a fast drop, but it was definitely going into the yellow and continuing to decrease. I believe that engine, the O235, the Lycoming O235, can operate at a minimum of 20 psi on the oil pressure, but the bottom of the green was at 60 psi, and we were, you know, dropping into the 50s, but there was a steady drop. And I immediately said, as soon as we noticed the drop, one of these things that you always practice, and you're always thinking, what if? And funny enough, we had actually spoken earlier in the flight when we took off about, should we have an engine failure, what are some of our options? I was really just in education mode to Carlos, but it was in our minds. and we went into that mode. So there was an airport, Twin Lakes Airport, small airstrip, as everything in North Carolina, surrounded by trees. It's only 4,000 feet, so not terribly short, but not terribly long. The winds didn't matter. We were at 4,500 feet. I pulled the power back just to kind of not stress the engine, which in the Cub was plenty. I think we were only 5 miles from the airport.
Yeah, 5 miles.
Maybe even closer than that. We should probably look at the flight-aware track and see our descent. But we got it in there. In my head I was thinking, I've got power, but if the oil pressure is dropping at this rate, it wasn't rapid, we may lose engine power at any point. So I decided to do a steep approach into Twin Lakes because it's surrounded by trees. What I didn't want to happen was get caught low, the engine quit, and now we're into the trees. So purposely stayed high, slipped it in, pretty significant slip.
Yeah.
Just all the way down from, again, 4,000 feet down to about 700 feet field elevation. Got it down. It wasn't the most beautiful landing, but it was all right.
All right, yeah. So after we landed, Armando taxied onto a tie-down area. Tie-down area. And then, obviously, I have to go out first because Armando's sitting in front of me. So I opened the side door and instantly looked down at the wing struts and the wheel, the actual gear itself, landing gear, and everything, and I mean everything, was covered in oil, like dripping oil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like somebody had just taken the grease trap and poured it on the side of the airplane.
So I jumped out, went round to the front of the Cub, and the whole front underneath section, including the exhaust, everything was covered in oil. So yeah, we managed to obviously get down with no issues. Find out the issue was the oil, which had obviously been leaking from somewhere, yet to be discovered. So after we landed, Armando was chatting to two guys who were in a Piper 32, PA32.
Cherokee 6.
Yeah. And they were then leaving in front of us to fly out. So they stopped, shut down, and came over to see if we were okay, if we needed assistance. And very kindly offered to fly us to Concord, which is near to where Armando is based.
All of this happened in about 10 minutes?
Yeah.
So we were on the ground. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not about to start sitting there and diagnose an engine. Even if it was a fitting, well, I'm a pilot, not a mechanic. I am not qualified to put on a fitting or put a fitting back on and certify it as airworthy. So there was no way, I knew in my mind there's no way that I'm flying the airplane back out of this airport. And by that I guess I'm saying I wasn't going to work on the airplane. I wasn't going to take a look at it, anything. There's a mechanic there on the airfield. I know the airfield. Been in there a couple times for some avionics work on different airplanes. And these guys were just there and said, well, where are you going? Because we're just going up for some proficiency. I said, well, if you can take us to Concord, that'd be great. And
I did.
That was on the heels of me calling Megan, my wife, and because she's usually tracking us on FlightAware, and my first words to her are, I'm okay, we're okay, we're on the ground safely. And she goes, oh bleep, what happened? I said, it was fine. Gave her the 30-second version. She was ready to jump in the car and drive the hour north to come pick us up. And these guys literally just said, yeah, we're happy to take you
Hop
back
in,
home.
put your bags in. jump in.
So thanks to Bruce and Ryan.
Yeah, thanks Bruce, thanks Ryan.
Father-son team flying together in their Cherokee 6 in their family airplane, and we took our bags out and threw it in their airplane and offered them gas money. They didn't even take gas money. So we were fortunate enough. Concord is my home airport, so I got them. I had them shut down, and I give them a little tour of the Hawker and the Pilatus that live in the same hangar. So I think they appreciated that, but they wouldn't even take $20 of gas money, and they said, "Nope, just pay it forward. Happy to help. Happy we were there."
And that is the level of hospitality that the aviation, the GA aviation community has here in the US.
Total strangers.
Total strangers, never met them before, and they literally flew me and Armando with our baggage to Concord, and saved the travel misery that would have been if we'd had to have driven a car or a vehicle there. So
we are in a car now. Probably the highlight of this whole story is once we got back to Concord, we picked up my car. Meg picked us up there. Then I took Carlos to Waffle House.
Waffle House!
As a treat, I took Carlos to Waffle House, and he's just getting a dose of America this weekend. We ate at Waffle House. We drove back up to Twin Lakes. It's an hour drive with all the airplane covers and the plugs and the chocks and everything, because I'm positive that airplane's going to be up there for a couple weeks now. And so Carlos was kind enough to, I don't think he still knows what day it is.
Yeah.
We've been going for 72 hours straight since you arrived. Tonight, we're going to drink some beers and relax, I think. So that's our adventure.
Yeah.
I suppose our next one is we will check in either from skydiving or perhaps the Pilatus flight up to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Yeah.
And I'm glad we are safe and on the ground. And for all you pilots out there, keep practicing those emergency procedures and always have them in your mind, because it was, as I said to Megan, a big old nothing burger if you're always thinking about what if. And it really wasn't. It was an emergency, but we didn't declare an emergency. The airplane was under control. The engine was running fine, and we were still in the yellow for the oil pressure. So, but it was a very expedient descent and get the airplane on the ground. So, watch your instruments, practice your emergency procedures.
Yeah. And on that note,
good teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Take care, everyone.
I mean, wow. Okay.
Good moment, wasn't it? Gosh.
I don't know. I don't know where to start. I really don't. I'm sort of a bit lost. Nev, any questions?
Well, of course, in a single-engine aircraft, and you're flying, GA, you're always looking to where to put it down should the worst happen, I would imagine. And I think that's probably hard-coded into every GA pilot from the moment they start their first or second lesson, I would imagine. Is that right, Armando?
I couldn't agree more. And that's it. We had ironically been talking about that when we departed our fuel stop. I was explaining to Carlos the what if game, playing the what if game, and talking about always having in your mind where you're going to put that on this airplane. And ironically, I had said, hey, it's a Piper Super Cruiser. It's basically a big Cub. We could put it down in about 300 feet of dirt, to be honest. I mean, the airplane would be banged up, but we'd walk away. So we already had it in our minds of, always of what if we lose the engine out. To be fair, it was probably sounded more dramatic than it really was. We didn't lose the engine. I was able to notice the indications, the abnormal indications, fairly quickly. So right away, I noticed the oil pressure was not normal. I know for my airplane, on a regular summer day, it's 72 psi, and it usually hangs out right at 72 psi. So as soon as it was down to 65-ish, I knew something was a little odd. And, then once it piques your interest, then you kind of keep watching it. And every little waver of the needle ended up, getting more imperative, I suppose, where, and one of my friends asked me, hey, were you alone or did you have a passenger? I said, no, I actually had a passenger. And I thought about it afterwards. And actually that kind of calms you down a little bit, because if you have someone that you're responsible for, I didn't realize this in the moment, but I realize this now after the fact, that when you're responsible for someone, you tend to put on a more calm response to the whole thing. And, and it kind of it made me more calm to have Carlos in the back to portray a more calm situation than it probably was. I had no doubt we were going to get the airplane down on an airfield. My only question was how much damage was there going to be to the airplane. And one thing I have to correct from the video is I thought the airplane was going to be down for a couple weeks. It wasn't. It was actually, they had it fixed the next morning. Richard Adams asked in the chat room if we found the culprit, and they found it right away. It was a hose. It was an oil supply line going to the top of the crankcase that basically failed. It had been manufactured in 1974, and this again kind of goes to the whole. I'm a pilot, not a mechanic. I don't know the difference. I don't know how to tell the difference between a hose that was manufactured in 1974 and 1995 and then 2020. That's just not in my, iceberg of knowledge. And that turned out to be the culprit. It was just time for this hose to give way. And we still had 3 quarts of oil left. The engine will run on 2. So out of 6 full capacity, it usually has 4.5 in it. We really only lost 1.5 quarts of oil. It looked like somebody had taken a Barrett 50 caliber, sniper rifle and shot it through the crankcase. But I suppose it's a bit like a head bleed when it just always looks more dramatic than it really is. And I think there was, let me see. There was another question in the chat room, I think.
I mean, it's as you're saying, like it's sort of. You sort of say, what goes through your mind at that? So, as you say, you sort of weirdly see. I guess you could argue that it could go one of 2 ways. It's like you've got a passenger on board that, therefore, it potentially could give you a lot of panic. Do you know what I mean? Rather than sort of going the other way.
It could. It certainly could. What was going through my mind was get the airplane on the ground and look at it there. I'm not one. And this is a lesson that I've learned over the years from both military flying and, to be honest, from the Reno guys, is just because you have partial power doesn't mean you're going to keep partial power very long. You may have partial power for an hour after that, or it may go dead. So the moment there was an abnormality, the things that came through my mind is we're close enough to home. We're probably only an hour or so at the most from my house where Meg can come pick us up. The absolute most conservative response is put the airplane on the ground and have somebody come look at it. So that's what went through my mind.
Indeed. Now, you've also sent Carlos, I know, is sort of relocating and setting up there. You've also sent us some pictures, which I'll pop up, and perhaps you can run us through some of them. So I assume this one is obviously when you went to go and collect Carlos from the airport. I mean, how much luggage did he bring with him, for goodness sake?
Well, one of those bags was just full of gifts and Jaffa cakes.
Oh, nice! I love a Jaffa cake.
Which we've put a pretty good dent on. By the way, if anybody wants to make Jaffa cakes to the carry-on household,
right?
That's like
they're like your favourite thing. And where should we go next? Obviously, because you had a little meet-up with a few very familiar faces, of course.
Yeah. So poor Carlos didn't get a chance to rest at all. We went straight from the airport to the Noda Brewing Company. Noda Brewing Company here in Charlotte is owned by a retired, I think, Airborne Express DC-8 captain. And Todd Ford, he was nice enough to reserve us a couple of tables there at Noda. And we met up with none other than Captain Jeff. Steph was there, us two, And then we had Malcolm, who is an APG listener, has been recently turned on to PTUK. He actually drove down a couple hours from Virginia to meet up with us. And then we had another pilot there, Juan Sebastian, who is a skydive pilot locally. And it was a great opportunity to meet up with these guys. Noda Brewing Company, Carlos had his first barbecue of the trip.
Yeah, outdoor barbecue. Nothing better. Outdoor barbecue from a barbecue truck. Nevertheless,
as you do. I just try to think what it was as we got here. We've got cheese steaks. What's this all about? This one here.
Right. So this is one that we're actually going to play out next week.
Oh, okay.
And for our, we'll play out a little segment that we recorded. So we were fortunate enough that I had a single pilot flight up to Philadelphia International Airport to collect some folks. And I asked the owner, hey, do you mind if Carlos comes with me in the right seat? And as you guys probably remember, last time that Carlos was here, he was able to fly the Pilatus and fell in love with it. And I think is just saving up for one now. But he was able to fly the Pilatus over to Asheville from Charlotte. It's only about a 20-minute flight. So when we got the opportunity to fly from Charlotte to Philadelphia International Airport, it all worked out really, really well. And Carlos got to see the other side of the Pilatus, which is flying in the flight levels. We were at 23,000 feet all the way up there, talking to New York approach and Philly approach. And, they're abruptness.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but we landed in Philadelphia. And of course, if you're going to land in Philadelphia and you got an extra 30 minutes, we went and got some Philly cheesesteaks. How would you describe those Philly cheesesteaks?
Imagine, Matt, you know yourself. You go down and you get a nice kebab in a pita bread,
right,
in the UK. So imagine a kebab about 4 times the size you're getting a standard. But the flavour is just unreal.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned there was a little treat, obviously, off the back of the excitement, shall we say? We'll call it excitement for the having to put the bear cub in a strange airport. Now, this photograph, I assume, is something to do with said dessert.
Oh, the Waffle House. Yeah.
That just speaks for itself, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
You're British in the U.S. Nev, next time you're in Texas, I think you can probably even get to I think there's Waffle Houses in Dallas. And
there are, yes. Yeah, very much so, yeah.
It's just an American establishment. You might as well put an American flag inside of a cheeseburger bun and then, eat it. There's nothing more American than a Waffle House.
No.
So
no, indeed.
That's all we need to say about that. Introduce Carlos.
Actually, Matt, do you remember years ago we used to have those little chefs?
Yes, I remember a little chef. Yeah.
Waffle House is like the American version of a little chef.
Wow, okay. Good to know. Right, okay, thanks, guys. More about your trip, obviously. We'll do more about that next week. Obviously, you say we've got something to look forward to next week. You're waving your finger at me. Uh-oh.
Yeah. No, that's it. So we'll play out a segment, but then if you're a Patreon supporter of the show or traditional supporter on the show, we'll have an extra video that Carlos and I recorded, essentially the whole flight, the departure out of Charlotte, the arrival into Philadelphia, including the crazy expletive taxi instructions that they give us at Philadelphia. So you get to hear something that Captain Nick is especially passionate about how American controllers will just throw the whole dictionary at you. But we'll have a segment that will play out on the show. But if you're a Patreon supporter, we'll have an extra extended segment that we'll send to you via link of the full flight on the way up there.
Lovely.
And back.
Sounds good. Okay, well, we'll make sure we get that all sorted out. Now, Nev, I just want to circle back to what we started the show with. Of course, we were talking about your, shall we say, not quite so smooth trip out, certainly going out, coming back. Now, of course, it's sort of hit the headlines again, isn't it? Of course, and we're not going to cover it in detail really, but I think it's worth a mention. Of course, it's other than obviously you being upset by them, you're not the only one who's had a bit of a bad experience. Certainly in the last sort of 48 hours with BA.
Well, the problem is that the app is not working very well, and you end up with, conflicting information or not being able to refresh the app properly. I even had a difference between what was going on my computer compared to what I was going on the app. And they'd also changed the terminal from Terminal 3 to Terminal 5 without telling anybody. Luckily, I did check it, as I say, beforehand. But yes, and then... but it's so painful at the moment. And just going back to the luggage business at the start of it, that was diabolical. And then, of course, the car not starting.
Yeah, indeed. Now, of course, as I say, although Nev, you've had a bad experience, obviously, of recent. As you say, having said that, other than the car, you had a good flight home. It was just the hiccup, obviously, with the car when you got back at the other end. Of course, we've had headlines this week, of course, of in the last 48 hours, I should say, of over 100 flights by BA being cancelled because of ongoing IT issues, which I believe they've now sorted. But of course, it's meant that aircraft were not where they were supposed to be, and all that kind of thing. So I think it's safe to say you're not the only one who's not had a recent pleasant experience with them. I mean,
and of course, when these things happen, you end up with aircraft and crew out of position, and especially on these short haul sectors, it really messes up the schedule like you wouldn't believe. And a friend of mine in Sweden, she's had the very similar problems. Well, she's her sister and brother-in-law. But it's just hard work at the moment, and I'm flying to Stockholm on Monday week, so I hope they've got it all sorted out by then. Otherwise, I shall be wagging my finger.
Well, quite absolutely,
being cross. Yes.
Fingers crossed, as they say. Right, we're going to move on then, if we may. We're going to do a bit of commercial news. As I say, we've already sort of teased, as I say, BA in the headlines again because of IT issues. We're not going to cover that in any more detail. We know what's happened. They need to update their IT systems. We'll move on. So if everybody is ready, we'll go into our commercial news.
Ready? Ready.
And hopefully, Carlos, you've got the show notes up there. You have story one, of course.
Yeah, this week's first story comes from, where's it coming from? Airlineratings.com. And we all know that Nev loves a bit of luxury. Well, this is one for Nev because Boeing are selling their ultra luxurious VIP 777X. They've got an order for one. They've sold their 777X to an undisclosed customer. I think that's Nev.
Well, I'll fly it for you, Nev.
Yeah. The 777X is due to be certified late next year for airline service, and there's also a video that's been released by VIP interior designed by Jet Aviation Design Studio and visualised by ACA. In its modernity meets classic elegance, including features like transparent OLED screens in the front of the window panels, illuminated table inlays, and flexible mood lighting. Boeing launched the VIP 777X back in December 2018. It can fly its owner halfway around the world in ultimate luxury and connect virtually to any cities. The BBJ 777-8 version of the plane will have an astonishing range of, I'm ready for this, 11,645,000 nautical miles, which is 21,570 kilometres. While the bigger BBJ 777-9 will still offer an ultra-long range of 11,000 nautical miles, this means they will fly further than any business jet. The long-legged 777-8 offers a spacious 3,256 square foot cabin, while this increases to 3,689 square feet with the 777-9. To demonstrate the versatility of the aeroplane's spacious cabin, Boeing has unveiled interior concepts from three leading design firms, Greenpoint Technologies, Jet Aviation, and Unique Aircraft Design. Each concept shows how the BBJ 777X can be transformed to suit the tastes of any VIP customer, including Neville Bones.
Quite.
Okay.
Where did you find the money for that, Nev?
Well, let's. I'll tell you after the show. But it's a heck of a interior, isn't it? I mean, it looked like the great room at the Grosvenor House Hotel at one point. I'm looking at some of those pictures.
I know. I mean, these videos are the video is absolutely incredible. I mean, I can't. I'm trying to. Carlos, you're a big fan like me of a certain space-based program, and like literally when you're looking at like the meeting room area with the chairs and tables, it really did sort of smack of like, you know, the boardroom in the Starship Enterprise, you know, where it's just like that sort of. It's
ready room.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's like. I mean, it's like nothing. It looks like as you say, Nev. That's a really good description actually, because it does really look like. It looks like a room. It doesn't look like you're on an aeroplane at all.
Yeah. I suppose the other thing is when you've got no what I call regular seats in there, you can use the whole width of the aircraft, and this is where the spaciousness comes from. And I also think there's a lot to do with the lighting as well, because obviously you got the kind of lighting that's in there is nothing like you get on a normal commercial aircraft. So that really does help create the illusion of space. I mean, it is spacious anyway, of course.
You have to wonder the caliber of person who's going to be able to afford to not only run this, but also own it.
So how much did you budget now for the yellow paint job?
Well, yes, I subcontracted that to my specialist company for that, so I'm unable to disclose.
Of course, right. Of course. Where are our manners? We didn't think that one through, did we? Wow. Okay. Oh no. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to the next story. That one is with me. It's from Economy Class and Beyond. .boardingarea.com. That's the website it's come from, and the headline is AirFi completes its fleet-wide rollout with EasyJet. AirFi has been busy rolling out its hardware on board the EasyJet fleet, providing a new in-flight entertainment and shopping platform. And I think I did indeed experience it when I did my recent trip out to Gran Canaria a couple of weeks ago. The move follows the successful rollout of EasyJet's EU and Swiss fleets, with in-flight technology provider AirFi deploying its portable streaming solution across the remainder of the airline's fleet. The final installs covered 108 aircraft, extending the platform to all of the 327 of its aircraft. In October 2022, the airline trialled AirFi's technology on board as part of an ongoing campaign to deliver an industry-leading digital onboard experience to its customers across Europe, having deemed the initial trial to be a success. The airline later equipped an additional 108 aircraft and now has deployed the AirFi streaming technology across all 327 aircraft. The in-flight system powers a customised wireless engagement portal, enabling passengers to access games, journey-specific content and airline information, plus browse in-flight retail offerings using their mobile phones, tablets or laptops. To access the content, passengers simply connect to a local Wi-Fi network created on board by AirFi's flexible and powerful hardware solution. Aircraft do not need to be taken out of service for this digital upgrade. Access to the content is free and there's no requirement for passengers to download an app before the flight or share personal information to get connected. The portal provided touch points for food and beverages, shopping and games, as well as a map and some rather good mapping features for those who miss an in-flight map. As you can see, it says, so let me pop up the pictures here. Very, very simple piece of technology. A little tiny box basically takes care of all of that. Looks like a sort of radio, doesn't it? It looks like the old school radio in a little box.
Looks like a TDK C90.
It does, doesn't it? Absolutely, indeed. And I can confirm, because it was on my flight, because it was EasyJet that I flew with over to Gran Canaria, and I have to say I spent most of my time killing the battery on my phone fascinated by the map, because do you know when you've got IFE like in your headrest or whatever that's in front of you, and you can quite often look at the map and sort of see what's going on there. It was actually quite nice to sort of be able to see where you were in relation, and it told you how long you got before you were going to touch down and all that kind of thing. And I did spend an awful lot of time playing the games, it has to be said, and I also used it to find out what snack I was going to have on there. It was very easy to connect to. It was very reliable. As I say, I mean, the games were simple. It was things like solitaire and mahjong and Sudoku and things like that. So it was all very sort of simple games, but actually just enough to keep you amused while you were sort of in the air really. And again, it's all done through your browser on your phone, so you didn't have to do anything with it. It'll be interesting to see how they extend this and what other services could well be offered through the platform in the future. But I mean, I think it's a sort of, certainly in terms of like a low cost solution, one powered up box. And it sort of does the whole aircraft. I mean, I say the map was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
No, I think this is the problem, isn't it, with excuse me, with some of these IFE systems, that the Wi-Fi and the clunkiness of the interface leaves a lot to be desired. But this looks a very clean way of doing it all from the design on the
very much so
on the app. On the browser part of it. Yeah,
very very much so.
Impressed me, guys, is on the way over last week. Obviously, I had access to Wi-Fi on board the American Airlines 777, and I was streaming you guys on the show in full HD on my phone, listening in. Obviously, you guys know I was in there, but I was watching you with no issues at all using the onboard Wi-Fi.
Oh, really? That good?
I didn't know your phone could do full HD, Carlos.
Oh, Mr. Bounds.
Indeed. But yeah, I mean, did it drop out much? I mean, did it lose frame rates and things like that? Did it sort of glitch much, or was it pretty smooth?
Admittedly, I had to drop it down to 720 off 1080.
Oh,
but
no.
It ran smooth. The audio was fine, and there was no lag or nothing. It was spot on, and I was really impressed with how good the Wi-Fi. Obviously, I didn't run a speed test. Perhaps I should have ran a speed test.
You do it on the way back.
Yeah, I'll do it on the way back.
Well, also, I mean, think of how much we've said it on the show. Everybody's on their devices, anyways. If you just kind of cater to that, how much money and weight and maintenance are you saving on IFE devices, which were terrible to begin with?
Yeah.
But now everybody's got this full HD streaming
capability
movie
in their hand.
Yeah, which they're going to be doing anyway. So.
And of course, it's I mean, these are things that people would have been bringing with them anyway. They're not bringing them with them just because they're on a flight. It would be a phone that's in their pocket, maybe a Bluetooth headset. I mean, I took a Bluetooth headset out with me and downloaded a load of podcasts so that I could listen for my 5-hour flight out to Gran Canaria. And that's so this is all technology that people are already bringing with them, or they've already got in their pocket. I mean, it's just, as you say, the weight saving is huge, isn't it? Really. Anyway, well, Carlos will do us a speed test on the way home, so we'll find out a bit more about what sort of speeds are actually possible mid-flight over at the Atlantic. And Nev, we'll move on, shall we, to the next story, if we may?
Yes, this is on timeout.com, and of course, getting to the airport, as we know, can be a bit traumatic, but actually the new Elizabeth line has just made it a lot easier for holidaymakers to get to Heathrow. Very good news for the folks in the east of England, if you know any of those.
No.
No. Well, but it's never fun getting to the airport, of course, but thankfully, just in time for your summer holidays, you can now travel directly from Shenfield in Essex to Heathrow without having to change trains. For the first time since the Purple Line opened almost a year ago, the service now goes directly from east to west in just 80 minutes.
Wow.
Updates to the line's timetable means that trains will run from Shenfield through East London to Heathrow Terminal 5 all day, and the airport will now receive 6 Elizabeth Line trains per hour. Previously, passengers travelling from Heathrow on the Elizabeth line could go as far as Canary Wharf and Abbey Wood, but now the line goes through 13 more stations in East London and Essex, including Stratford, Ilford, Romford and Shenfield. When taking a train from Heathrow to Shenfield, passengers no longer have to change at Paddington. That's a huge benefit, isn't it? To mark the occasion, for this week only, the trains are being voiced by the Apprentice star and born and bred Essex boy, Tom Skinner. According to the Mayor, the Elizabeth line is now the most popular rail service in the country. He says that an incredible 3.5 million journeys are made each week as passengers enjoy the modern trains, beautiful step-free stations and reduced journey times. The Elizabeth line is the most significant addition to our transport network in decades and has proven to be much more than just a new railway, but providing a crucial economic boost to the whole country and playing a vital role in drawing people back onto London's public transport. He says the introduction of the full timetable marks the completion of the Crossrail project, and I'm delighted that passengers will have even more frequent services to get them across the capital and beyond. Now, I have to say, I've used the Elizabeth line a couple of times now. It's a really good service, very frequent. Of course, all the trains are brand new, lovely and clean, and that east-west route across London was always a challenging one, but this is brilliant news. And of course, you can use your regular Oyster card on it as well.
Wow. See, now I'm quite excited about this because, I mean, Carlos has obviously parked for his trip. Obviously, I'm going out in October, and I don't have that luxury. I've got to leave the car here. I can't book the train yet because it's too far in the future. And I was genuinely thinking I wasn't quite sure what was going to be the best option. But actually, if I can pick it up at either Stratford or Shenfield, or even Romford, that's going to be the answer, isn't it? Actually, is to just jump across there, and then wherever it is that I'm going to stay, because I'll have to do it the day before, obviously, because the trains don't start early enough here in order for me to get there in time for my flight. But sort of try and find myself a nice little hotel, because most of am I right? Most of the airport is serviced by little shuttle buses for the various sort of hotels that are nearby.
Yes, and some of them are even walking distance. But no, there's some good shuttle services there, definitely. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah,
that sounds like a plan.
Even on your worst day, this is my own personal opinion for everybody to listen to the podcast, but I very much appreciated the availability of public transport in the UK to get to any of the airports. Just not a thing that we have here, unless you live in New York City. Even if you live in Atlanta or something like that, sure, there are some rail lines that go there, but none of it is a smidgen as convenient as it is in the UK, even going through London before the Elizabeth line. I always went to Heathrow on public transport from Cambridge. I would start.
Okay, I think we seem to have lost Armando's audio for some reason, which is a bit of a shame. So I'll tell you what, I'll take the next story then while they hopefully get that sorted. They've gone a bit strange for some reason. So I'll take the next story then while they hopefully perhaps reconnect their audio and hopefully we'll be okay then, because we've lost them for some reason. The next story, Jetit moves into furloughs as pause in operations continues, with competing stories coming out of fractional charter operator Jetit. Stakeholders are seeking clarity, and the news doesn't look good, according to several sources that reached out to Flying. Jetit has begun a significant round of furloughs, capping a rough weekend for the company, in which it has also voluntarily grounded its fleet and paused operations. It's in its recent series of decisions made following a runway overrun accident at Honda Jet last week in South Carolina. Jetit moved first to a safety stand down, according to an email sent by CEO Glenn Gonzalez to company stakeholders on Monday. After careful consideration of this and other recent similar events, we have made the difficult decision to implement a safety stand down as of the 18th of May and ground this aircraft type in our fleet effective immediately, said Gonzalez. Jetit has taken this precautionary measure to ensure the safety and well-being of our passengers, pilots and the integrity of our operations. The stand down will be focused on reviewing policies and procedures for the safe operation of HondaJet aircraft and gathering more information. In a separate response to a series of 8 accidents that have taken place involving HondaJets over the last year, HondaJet Owners and Pilots Association had already called for its own safety analysis and subsequent international sessions and training for operators to address those concerns at a future date. With no current pause in operations, in a video to its members, HJOPA Executive Director Julie Hughes framed the association's position. All of you are experienced pilots, and while you have your own ideas involving each of these events, it's critical that we do not jump to conclusions or make unfounded assumptions, said Hughes. Instead, we are allowing the data to inform us about this concerning trend within our platform. This data-driven approach will guide us in making appropriate actions to enhance the safety of each of our operations. HJOPA is working in concert with Honda Aircraft Co., Flight Safety International and its board and membership. The organised break in aviation activities planned by said group stands in contrast to the emergency style stand down in progress at Jetit. Jetit has positioned itself uniquely in the market, offering share owners use of the fractional fleet at a relatively low rate of $1,600 per hour. When the company is able to serve its customers utilising its fleet, it typically makes a modest amount per hour on the transaction, but if the fractional has to fulfill a customer request for service with an aircraft outside of its fleet, that margin erodes sharply. In the midst of a dispute regarding service from Honda Aircraft Co., Jetit announced it would pivot its fleet away from the HA420 and to Embraer's Phenom 300. Part of the reason Gonzalez gave for the change was in more than $20 million in off-fleet expenses since 2020 that Jetit had to absorb, which it blamed on poor service record for the Honda Jet. Honda Aircraft Co. responded with a breach of contract lawsuit filed against Jetit, saying it had violated certain agreement terms and defamed the OEM with its disparaging statements. OEM, original equipment manufacturer, by the way. HACI dropped the lawsuit in a confidential settlement in April, and it confirmed that it considered Jetit a customer it would continue to provide service for as agreed upon. However, Jetit's own customers have reported significant fall off in service levels since the beginning of 2023, to the point of unreliability, combined with the word from 2 former executive level employees speaking on condition of anonymity that Jetit has begun furloughing personnel at all levels of the enterprise, supports speculation that the business is in serious trouble. And I think it's safe to say that is very much the case. I mean, this is. I hate it when these sort of disputes. It just never ends well for anyone, does it? Really, when stuff like this happens.
No, and obviously there's an ongoing investigation going on here, isn't there? So it's important that we can't really jump to conclusions, but clearly there's been some issues and some incidents that have been going on. Fractional ownership, of course, is quite a common thing. I think more in the GA sector than in the sort of corporate jet sector, perhaps. But if there's a dispute that goes on, then it's going to go legal, probably, and that's just going to mean less money for the outfit to operate with. So this is obviously an ongoing thing, as I say. So we'll have to see what the outcome is.
So more details forthcoming.
One of the unintended consequences of something like this is the airplane is very quickly developing a bad rap. And I'll tell you right now, from firsthand knowledge that some of the Honda Jet incidents that have happened this year have nothing to do with the airplane. It's all
Really?
pilot decision making. But that, and then as we saw with the Max, and once the news gets a hold of it, and once the industry gets a hold of an opinion, to be honest, and then they start running with it. Now the Honda Jet, which could be a really, really great airplane, you know, I hate to say it, but it's always what Neil Cluffley is always talking about. You get a disruptor, you get something that's new, and there's always everybody's just always finding a reason to pick it apart and make it not work. And I feel like the Honda Jet is falling into this. I've never flown a Honda Jet. I don't know what is going on, but we have had those 8 mishaps this year, fairly successively, I suppose. But and it's just a kind of a shame because the industry, the news, the media gets a hold of this, and the next thing you know, companies go under, people lose their jobs, and then production of the Honda Jet, ceases. It's just so hard. Such a hard industry to break into when you're a disruptor and you have a new product, unless you're just backed by the billions of Textron and Embraer and those kinds of operators in Gulfstream.
And actually, for me there, Armando, your sort of first-hand experience there, that, for me, is super interesting, as you say, because if you read this article, it all sounds like it's a, sort of tit-for-tat type sort of thing between Jetit and Honda, but you're saying that the incidents, essentially, that, to the very best of your knowledge and first-hand experience, the issues, if you like, that are being discussed here are not actually to do with, are not actually the fault of Honda.
Yeah, it was a partnership. Honda Jet and Jetit were, they partnered up and said, hey, we believe in each other, and we're going to create this whole company, Jetit, on the Honda Jet. And then by Jetit saying, wait a minute, the Jet's not quite right, we're going to pivot over to the Embraer, the company Honda, and Honda Jet, which is, as Captain Cruz points out in the chat room, is about an hour north of here. In Greensboro, North Carolina, is where they're manufactured. Honda Jet is saying, wait a minute, you signed a promise. You signed an agreement that said we were going to embark on this together and that we were going to popularize the Honda Jet. But now Jetit is saying, well, you're unreliable, so we're backing out of the deal and going over to the Embraer. To the average customer, probably they're not going to see any difference. They'll still just broker it out to other corporate jets. But it's a huge hit for Honda.
Yeah, I bet. Especially when they're trying to sort of, as you say, break into the industry. Okay, we'll move on because we are rapidly running out of time already and we're only on story 5. So, Carlos, you have the next one.
Yeah, the good news if you fancy buying an old 747, this is on flightglobal.com. And we've all heard of Strata launch and obviously the failure of the Virgin Orbit as their assets are being carved up. The 3 companies have successfully bidded for assets of Virgin Orbit, with aerospace firm Strata Launch picking up the modified Boeing 747-400, which was used to carry the airdrop satellite launch vehicles. Virgin Orbit entered US bankruptcy protection earlier this year, weeks after the 747's first attempts to launch satellites from the UK ended in failure, as we all saw when the rocket suffered a thrust malfunction. Over 30 expressions of interest were submitted for Virgin Orbit, but court filings show that 3 entities have been declared successful, having offered to purchase various assets. Strata Launch already operates the large and unique twin fuselage scale Composites 351, originally developed for airdrop and orbital launches. And the court filing shows it submitted $17 million bid for the General Electric CF6 powered 747 and related items. It states that the aircraft is due for a C2 heavy maintenance check in early August, and its landing gear is on a 2-year extension which expires in July, and a number of minor systems faults need repairing. The filing also points out the aircraft's documentation is no longer continuous as of the completion of its flights to and from the UK spaceport Cornwall during the failed January launch mission, but the jet remains in the same configuration. At the closing, the seller will deliver a logbook that is up to date for all operations of delivery of the aircraft, date of the aircraft it has. And according to the court filings, an entity called Launcher bid $2.7 million for the facilities and machinery located at Mojave Space Center in California. Third bidder, Rocket Lab USA, put forward a bid of just over $16.1 million, I should say, for Virgin Orbit's headquarters and manufacturing complex in Long Beach. Now, while it confirms the bid does not include the 747 or launch vehicles, Rocket Lab says the assets are expected to advance the production of its own launch vehicle known as Neutron. How very space age. Rocket Lab will not be integrating Virgin Orbit's launching system with its existing launch system it adds. And with Neutron's design and development well advanced, a transaction represents a capital expenditure savings opportunity to augment the production capability to bring Neutron to the launch pad quickly to serve the customers and future successors. So, if you fancy a heavily modified 747 with the capability to launch an orbital platform, then get down there now. Because that aircraft is an ex-Virgin Atlantic 747. I remember rightly.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah,
I can't keep up with Virgin Orbit and Virgin Galactic, and because Virgin Galactic just launched something. I can't keep up. I don't know the difference.
No, well, I mean, and I'm the last person to have any indication about what that is. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's sort of sad, I suppose, in one hand, but you know, I guess it'll sort of all come out in the wash. I guess I don't think it's the last we'll hear of it, though, is it?
No,
I don't.
Some will play soon. Yeah.
Indeed.
So, Matt, you've got the next one, another tech story for you, Matt.
Yeah, we'll rattle through this. This one's sort of fairly self-explanatory, so we'll rattle through this one, but it is interesting. And I've got no link on this, so I'm afraid I don't know where it's come from. But Inmarsat rolls out fastest ever Jet Connex in-flight connectivity plans. Satellite communications company Inmarsat is now selling a series of faster in-flight broadband plans as part of its Jet Connex service with business partner Satcom Direct. Inmarsat is rolling out its plans, which will provide data transfer speeds of up to 100 megabits 100 megabits in response to ever-increasing demand by customers for lightning-fast connections, says Melinda Janda, Vice President of Commercial Strategy for Inmarsat's Business and General Aviation Division. The partners have been flight testing the technology using a Gulfstream G550 outfitted with Satcom's Direct Plain Simple Ka-band terminal. They expect to achieve certification of the system in time for the plans to be available in the third quarter of this year, says Satcom Direct Chief Commercial Officer of Business Aviation and Maritime Products, Michael Skov Christensen. The results of our flight testing have been outstanding, and we are now close to securing a type approval for its use on Inmarsat's global Ka-band satellite network, Satcom Direct President Chris Moore says of the terminal. In addition to developing tail-mounted antennas and modem units for the service, Satcom Direct has partnered with Inmarsat to distribute airtime. This will enable passengers to simultaneously connect more devices and enjoy unchallenged access to the most data-hungry applications, including high-definition video conferencing, without compromising on the service's proven characteristics of consistency, reliability, resilience, and seamless global availability. Inmarsat has said the company launched its Jet Connect service 6 years ago. Since then, the product has earned its reputation as a gold standard for business aviation in-flight broadband, says Inmarsat Head of Business Aviation Kai Tang. As passenger expectations around connectivity evolve, it is imperative that we stay one step ahead of the technology. I mean, that's very, very exciting, although it sounds like we're almost there, judging by your experience, Carlos, going out to see Armando. So, could be very, very interesting. Nev, what have you got for us this time round?
Well, it's on simpleflying.com, and it's a BA promotion. They've revealed that they're going to be offering flights where tickets can only be bought by frequent flyers with points. 2 routes are planned before the end of the year, with a further 3 destinations planned for the 2024 Easter holidays. As airlines look to add value to their frequent flyer offerings, some are offering flights that are available exclusively to their frequent flyers. BA revealed that it would become one of these airlines in mid-April, revealing 2 initial routes for its Avios-only flights. Now the pool of 2 routes only accessible to Executive Club members has increased to 7. Well, this week the British flag carrier revealed that it will be adding 5 more points for plane destinations through to April 2024. The November the 3rd inaugural flight to Sharm el-Sheikh will remain the first service to be operated by this model. However, it will now be joined 2 weeks later by an Avios-only service to Las Palmas on November the 15th, returning to Gatwick Airport a week later on November the 22nd. For those perhaps looking for some winter sun, the other route added this year is between Gatwick and Lanzarote. This rotation is set to depart London on December the 4th and returning on December the 11th. The previously announced points planes will then operate to Geneva on February the 10th, 17th, 24th and March the 2nd, with return operating a week later respectively. The second tranche of routes announced by British Airways today will then all take place together over the Easter break. BA will be offering Avios only flights on the following routes, departing March the 29th, 2024 and returning on April the 7th. They are Heathrow to Barcelona, Heathrow to Nice and Gatwick to Tenerife South. So that's quite an interesting model, isn't it? Where you can only buy these flights with points only.
What are your thoughts on that? That would never fly here, but
no. Well, of course, people like me want to use points to top up or to get discount off a flight, for example. Because you won't be earning any points doing this because you're spending them. But it's worth a try. They need to find... The problem is I think they're on limited routes and they are on limited these time scales. It looks like they're on a week's rotation, something like that. So if that fits in with your schedule, then that's fine. But that's not always the case. I'm trying to find suitable destinations for Avios points redemption is traditionally quite a challenge. Sometimes it works, but often it doesn't for a lot of people. But let's see what happens. Let's see how they get on with it.
Yes, indeed. It's, as you say, going to be very sort of... you're more of a collect. I mean, you collect points, Nev, but and yet you sort of indicate that you're not sort of keen to spend them.
Well, no, it's just trying to find the flight rotations that because not all flights are available with. Sometimes it's with Avios and some extra money to put together with it, but they are on limited routes. Sometimes they're very early in the morning, or sometimes they're late at night. They're not in those nice, timed routes between sort of 9 and 6 during the day, for example.
Indeed.
But it's good to see someone trying something different. For a mainstream airline.
Indeed. Okay, we'll move on to the next story. I'll take.
He's going to take this one.
Okay.
I'll take C9. Yeah, this is interesting. Actually, Carlos and I were watching the video earlier today, and the story title is "When Buffett's Plane Passengers' as Door Open on Flight in South Korea." But this has obviously kind of made its way through the internet already. I think it just happened today, right? So police in South Korea have arrested a man who allegedly, I don't think it's very allegedly, I think it's pretty obvious that it happened, opened the door on an Asiana flight shortly before the aircraft landed, triggering some panic amongst the 194 passengers on board, leading several passengers being taken to the hospital. I believe 9 was the last number that we saw. The A321 landed safely, but with its door still open, as you saw in some of the pictures on social media at Daegu Airport in South Korea about 12:40 p.m. after leaving Jeju Island an hour earlier. No one was seriously injured, as far as we know, but these 9 people were taken to hospital after suffering from suspected hyperventilation, which I could see that if there's a 150 mile per hour wind right next to you. Daegu Fire Department officials said they included 8 school children from Jeju, according to the island's education office. So the airplane was just a few minutes from landing when the male passenger sitting next to an emergency door opened a cover and pulled the lever, so the door opened about 650 feet above the ground, according to an Asiana spokesperson. Now, a video clip taken by a passenger captured the moment that the wind ripped through rows of passengers who had already fastened their seatbelts to prepare for landing. Thankfully, they did, with a gap in the middle of the fuselage clearly visible. And initially, we were trying to wonder, Carlos and I were wondering, well, was this an overwing exit? We didn't know what kind of airplane it was, but once we found out it was an A321, there is no overwing exit. It's a full floor-to-ceiling, door 3, I believe, or that door 3, door 2, that opened up. Anyways, as you guys can imagine, this is a pretty significant thing, and some of the pictures afterwards, one of my first questions was, did the slide deploy? It appears that the slide did deploy exactly as you're playing out there. And I was thinking, aside from the structural damage caused by the door opening as it is, and these are hydraulically assisted doors, so you can do it. The door was armed. But they're incredibly lucky that the slide, one, didn't rip off a good chunk of aluminum and a part of the fuselage coming out. But also that slide coming off and ripping off, that didn't get entangled in the tail of the aircraft on short final. You're at a low altitude. They were 600 feet, so you're maybe 20 seconds from landing or so. That could have been catastrophic had that slide. Not to mention, the loss of life if you didn't have. When we looked at Southwest 1380, explosive decompression. That's happened a couple times in aviation history or commercial aviation history, where people have actually gotten sucked out. The Aloha aircraft 737 way back in the 80s. At this point, the aircraft was probably depressurized already, so opening the door wasn't going to be a huge deal. Nobody was going to get sucked out unless they didn't have their seatbelts on, which thankfully they did. So I just couldn't imagine this from the pilot standpoint or even a cabin crew standpoint of, you get a door light on short final. I mean, they probably thought it was a mistake, or a faulty sensor, but you can imagine how emotional it would be if you're a passenger here. So luckily, only minor injuries.
And as you say, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, when the slide, as you saw in the video there, you could see that it, obviously the slide had deployed, it had been ripped off. I mean, lucky it didn't get ingested by the engine or all sorts of. I mean, there's so many scenarios where that could have gone very south very, very quickly. And all because of an idiot. I mean,
we'll get a slight smacked hand and a
South Korea.
juicy fine.
In South Korea, I think it might be a little more
South
than
Korea,
that.
so he'll be missing now for.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah, he'll just be missing now. That's it. End of. Indeed,
Anyway.
but I mean, and Nev, I mean, because as I say, we saw this story being sort of released and stuff. Nev, I mean, it's just like, I mean, we were having a conversation in our group chat here. I kind of assumed that you couldn't physically open the door and like it was locked in some way, like permanently, until you were like on the ground, until like some fancy mechanism was triggered.
Well, obviously, when you're at any kind of altitude and the aircraft's pressurised, there is no way you can open the door at all, because the differential pressure between the inside and the outside is just enormous. No amount of strength to be able to do that. It has occurred to me, though, as I sit in my my king seat in 1A,
Quite right, yes.
sipping my champagne and looking around at my fellow passengers. it has occurred to me, it's not actually on short final, but on the takeoff roll, and certainly for the first 500 feet after the aircraft's taken off. Can those doors be opened if someone was really determined to do so? Armando, do you know if that is the case, or is there some kind of interlock?
I believe so, and I think it's actually designed that way because, you may have you can't rely on a squat switch or an air ground sensor, because if you were to actually have a crash, let's say a aircraft runs off the runway, all of those sensors would be ripped off anyway. They're all in the gear, the squat switches. So I think this probably identifies a potential weak point, but you can't account for every possible scenario.
Yeah,
I don't imagine this will change anything in the operators, because you wouldn't want to take off with the doors disarmed or locked. That's the most critical part of the flight, is the takeoff and landing. So I think it will probably just come out as a special interest item, maybe.
See, now, I mean, I've heard that phrase all the time. Obviously, I heard it when I went out to Gran Canaria, where they were saying doors were locked and armed.
Yeah, doors armed and cross-checked is a pretty standard
doors
call.
Armed, yeah, sorry. So not locked, actually. Yeah, doors armed and cross-checked. Now, I'd assumed that what they meant by armed was that, it was essentially locked and that people couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But what you actually mean is, essentially the slide is armed. Yeah,
and you can actually see it if you're in 1A or if you're in any of the exit rows, you can see when the cabin crew on an A321, it's a lever with the word armed, right? And it's separate. So if it's disarmed, lever is in the up position and you can't read the word. But once they arm it, if you actually look below the door, you can see there's an aluminum bar. I don't know if it's aluminum, but there's a metal bar underneath that actually latches down onto the aircraft frame. Like that, if you open the door, the slide that is contained inside the door will be latched to the airplane.
Okay.
But that is the design. But these are all great questions. I think it'll just identify a potential weak point.
Because I'd sort of assumed that unless you were on the ground, it wasn't possible to open it, basically. And so, I've never been worried about, as a nervous passenger, this will now make me nervous if you've got a disruptive passenger.
Yeah, but I would say you're in how can I say this? You're in a very good position, Matt, because you would be able to overpower the miscreant quite easily.
Good point, well made.
So don't worry about anything.
No, indeed. And especially if I'm hungry, he's in a lot of trouble. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, indeed. Okay. That pretty much brings our commercial stories to a close for this week. This is very weird doing this while you're here, Carlos, just because we're having issues with your audio over there, unfortunately. Nev, we've got a little video that we're going to play out for you. Now, if you could sort of tell us a little bit about it, I'd be very grateful.
Oh, yes, this is our little visit to East Fortune. Is this the one we're playing?
I think so, yes, absolutely.
Yes. Well, we've got a lot of content to play out over the coming weeks. The museum was so welcoming to us. It was absolutely brilliant. We had the run of the whole place, and it was a fascinating insight into how they preserve these aircraft and all the challenges around it. Now, interesting enough, the item that I was going to read has disappeared from my screen, which is slightly unfortunate. But if I remember, I can't remember which aircraft it is.
I think the title of it is Carlos with Britten-Norman Islander.
Yes, this is the one. This is the Britten-Norman Islander of the Scottish Air Ambulance Service. Ooh. So let's go over to Carlos at the museum.
The Civil Aviation hangar here at the National Museum of Flight. Behind me, the Britten-Norman Islander, the Islander which connected communities in Scotland since entering service back in 1967. For residents on the island of North Ronaldsay, Islanders can take them to facilities in Kirkwall in Orkney in around 25 minutes. In contrast, a weekly ferry trip takes more than 2.5 hours. Now, you may recognise the aircraft, the Britten-Norman, the Islander, as having another kind of sibling to the family, which is the Trilander, which has the extra engine on the rear there on the tail. Which I think were pretty much in service up until a few years back. But this was an air ambulance, and for almost 40 years the Islanders operated as air ambulances with aircraft based in Lerwick in Shetland, Kirkwall and Glasgow. This particular Islander behind me here operated as an air taxi in Germany for many years, and for 5 years it flew parachutists at Errol in Perthshire. It's painted, as you can see here, in the Air Ambulance, the Scottish Air Ambulance livery, and it's a tribute to the important role in Scotland that the aircraft played with its role here. Built in 1977 with a crew of 2 pilots, and could take a maximum of 8 passengers with a top speed at 170 miles per hour, and also had a range of 810 miles, which is around about 1,300 kilometres. But the aircraft is in really good condition here inside the hangar, in the civil aviation hangar here at the museum. Really well looked after, really nice and tidy inside. And you could almost say you could wheel this out today and possibly take off from the runway, which is just across from where we are here today. But really fantastic hangar here. For those of you who might get a chance to come up here and have a look at the museum, there is so much to do, and especially in this hangar where we're standing now, there are many civilian aircraft from around the various eras of time of flight, all spanning from the early 60s right through to the early 90s. We'll have a look at those aircraft in a moment, but we'll just have a look at the master that is the Britten-Norman Islander here, in this glorious colour, which I think would definitely stand out in the air for those of you who would see this flying overhead. Also a big rear door at the back for loading on patients on stretchers as well, which is always handy, and has quite a good big load area here behind the actual seats where the pilot sits. There's quite a big load area behind here with a large side opening door at the rear of the aircraft there. But all in all, what a great place to be. Really enjoying it here today so far. Still loads to see and do, and we're going to carry on with our tour of the museum.
So, of course, Carlos, an amazing time was had by you all there. I mean, yeah, we've still got quite a few still to see, I believe.
Yeah, I think we've got probably another 3 or 4 segments now.
Yeah, and then the interview, of course, with Ian, who's the curator of the museum.
Oh, wow.
There's about 3 or 4 parts of that to come as well. So we thought we'd do that when we've played all these out. But that the Islander is a really interesting aircraft, very versatile, and of course the Trilander version that you mentioned in that piece that was used extensively in the Channel Islands between Jersey and Guernsey and Alderney.
It's like the DC-10 of prop aircraft.
Yes.
Quite, indeed. Okay, it's Jonathan Warner's favourite time of the show. Armando, what's next?
Despite our best efforts, again, we do have time for military. Pull that ejection handle, Matt.
What's up, bogeys 13550, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay, understand, bogeys.
All right, for this one, we're going to airandspaceforces.com. We've been talking about this, I think, for 3 years now, 4 years now, the Air Force's Light Attack Aircraft Program. So the U.S. Special Operations Command is going to start accepting delivery this October of the Sky Warden, which is the modified crop duster that won its Armed Overwatch competition last year. We talked about that on the show. Already in low-rate production, SOCOM is expecting 26 aircraft as part of its initial production run. Those aircraft will go through some operational testing, and a full-rate production decision will follow as soon as March 2025. So that's actually pretty quick as far as government acquisitions go. The low-rate production decision was first reported by Flight Global. All told, SOCOM, Special Operations Command, is looking to acquire 75 of the Skywarden aircraft to fly surveillance, close air support, and precision strike missions in austere and permissive environments, right? So do we determine permissive, non-permissive? It's not really designed to go up against enemy air defenses. It's designed to be somewhere where you actually control the airspace. Something like this would look like counterinsurgency operations in Africa, the Middle East, South America, something like that. SOCOM, Air Force Special Operations Command, work together. They said that they currently rely on a variety of different aircraft to perform those functions separately, and only one platform to do it, to collapse a stack. That's a very military term of saying reducing the number of aircraft airborne over an operation. The Skywarden, as we talked about, was selected by Special Operations Command in August 2022. It's developed. It's a collaboration between L3 Harris and Air Tractor. It is based on the AT-802 aircraft, which is used for agriculture and firefighting. It's rugged. It's got chunky tires. It's built for primitive airfields. It's got some race car style roll cage to protect the two-person crew. It is designed to be modular, so the wings pop off. The wings don't pop off in the air. The wings are designed to pop off for transport, but even all of its sensors, its armament, it's all modular. It's all designed to be kitted out in the field very quickly for whatever mission is going to be employed in. So the Skywarden is based on an existing system. L3 Harris claimed that it can be delivered in less than 12 months. So there you go. Plans for the aircraft to reach initial operation capability probably next year sometime, maybe 2025, fully operational by 2029. And again, this is an aircraft that we talked about that we could potentially see not only employed in U.S. special operations, but I guarantee you that the Royal Air Force will probably end up with a couple of them. I bet you the Australians will probably end up with a couple of them, as well as some of our partner air forces that are traditional trade partners, we'll just call it. Very capable aircraft. The competition for this has been going on for almost 15 years now, of a similar capability onto a crop duster style aircraft. I know even I applied when I first left the Air Force. I was going to go work at a company called IOMAX here in Charlotte, which was had Archangel. I think you guys saw it at the Dubai Air Show. Yeah. So this looks almost exactly like the Archangel. Just L3 Harris is a bigger company with a lot more money than a small company like IOMAX. So it's been in the project a project for a long, long time.
Incredible. So I think is that what's next?
You want to take the F-18?
Yeah, we've got the F-18 one next.
Yep.
This happened this week, actually, while I've been out here in the States. It's been all over Twitter as well and social media. It's from thedrive.com. A Spanish EF-18 Hornet crashed during airshow practice flight. So the Spanish Air Force pilot was taken to hospital with injuries after ejecting from his EF-18 Hornet before a crash at Zaragoza Air Base. The video, which can be seen on social media, I don't know if Matt's got a copy of that, it shows the EF-18 in a steep climb before pitching over, and after a brief moment of level flight, careening nose down into the ground. You can also hear a sharp throttle adjustment during the pitch over maneuver, and the pilot ejects just before the jet impacts the ground, resulting in a huge fireball. Citing Spain's Civil Guard, the Associated Press reported the pilot suffered leg injuries from the low altitude ejection. And Spanish news agency EFE reported the EF-18 was practicing for an air show when the crash occurred. And in a tweet, the Spanish Air Force and Space Force confirmed the EF-18 was one of the 15th Wings jets, which operates multiple squadrons of Hornets at Zaragoza in Spain. And it's in the process of replacing its Hornets fleets, designated the EF-18 for España with the Eurofighter Typhoons although the type will serve to the end of the decade before that process is completed. So they're going to get rid of these aircraft, the EF-18s, to replace them with the Typhoons. But yeah, the pictures online. There's quite a few of them on Twitter, and there's also, I think there's a video as well. Yeah, on Twitter.
I'm just trying to get that. If you chat amongst yourselves, I shall hopefully be able to get it. Loaded in a second.
We obviously see this, every now and again we see these incidents happen with fighter jets where the pilot is ejected, and I mean Armando will know as well as most people will that ejecting at a low level is never a best option.
Yeah, it's always a pretty emotional event when your airplane's pointed at the ground and you're ejecting. When you're pointed up, I think it's probably a little bit better. But and I couldn't really tell from the video whether you get a chance to play it or not, Matt. I couldn't tell from the video if it was a high angle of attack with high power. That's a pretty vulnerable state to have a fighter jet in, right? Especially when you're doing air show style maneuvers, you could develop a disrupted airflow, could lead to a compressor stall. Now, the F-18, while it's got 2 engines, it's more or less centerline thrust, right? So losing one engine wouldn't cause too much of a yawing motion or a controllability issue, as far as I know. But if you're in a high power, high angle of attack situation and you do lose an engine through a compressor stall or intake of a bird or anything like that, that could lead to a pretty significant roll and yaw motion that could render the airplane uncontrollable. And then, obviously when you're doing air show practice, you're down low. And yeah, like we said, probably an emotional event when you eject out of an F-18 and it's pointed at the ground.
So I found the video, Armando. It's only 9 seconds long, but what I'm going to try doing, I don't know if you can see it. Are you able to see the video at all?
Yeah.
So I'm going to. I've slowed it right down, so I don't know whether that'll give you an idea. There you go. So that's the event there. Let me restart that. So that's the point at where I don't know if he's already ejected by that point.
He hasn't. You can see the. Oh yeah, he did eject just by that point. Just before that. I think when the video picks up.
I think that's him up there, isn't it? I think you can just see him.
Already pointed at the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you're talking about a populated area too. It's just a terrible feeling for the pilot.
Yeah. Indeed. Fortunately, nobody hurt with this one. Not seriously, anyway. So everybody lives to tell the tale. And as you say, discontinuing the aircraft, presumably not as a result of this.
Yeah.
No, they're just changing aircraft. I think because of the age. I think they're moving on.
Yeah.
So, Armando, you've got the next story about an aircraft I think most people would have heard of.
I can't believe it's already Oshkosh time. Like we are just clicking away the years, aren't we? I feel like we were just talking about Oshkosh, but it's Oshkosh time again. B-29 Doc is going back to Oshkosh and AirVenture 2023. They just announced that this summer. This aircraft, which everybody loves to see flying, Doc and Fifi are the only 2 flying B-29s, will be featured at Boeing Plaza. That's the center plaza there at Oshkosh. They are going to be providing aircraft rides in Appleton alongside with, Appleton is right next to Oshkosh, by the way, and alongside EAA's B-25, the Berlin Express. So obviously there's a lot of work that goes into this. Matt, last week, you and Jeff did a great job of talking about the B-17 airworthiness directive, an issue with the wing spar and the wing bolts. That airworthiness. So when we wrote the show notes, it was an impending directive. When the show aired, it was that Friday that the FAA sent out a mandatory airworthiness directive, essentially grounding all of B-17s.
Wow.
Which makes this, the B-29 Doc and Fifi, it makes them even more important as highlights of that World War II style heavy bomber, the Lancaster that you guys have flying over there. Now that Sally B is not going to be in the air anytime soon, we're just losing a lot of these aircraft to age, and these are the aircraft that generate interest, and they generate love for aviation, especially for young kids. So it's really important. Lots of work from volunteers and donations, and it's really cool that dock is going to be at Oshkosh this year. So late July, I think it's the last week of July, you get a chance to go to Oshkosh. Do so. Send us in some videos and pictures from anybody that's up there listening to the show, because I don't think any of us are able to go this year. I'll be in recurrent training, so.
I mean, we did sort of cover it, obviously last week, as you say, but I mean, this hopefully isn't the end of the story for the B-17, though. Hopefully,
I don't think it will be. I think they're so important in both of our countries' histories that there will be a lot of engineering that happens. It's just how to get there, you have to develop a process, get the process certified, get the fix certified, and then for replacement parts, somebody has to manufacture them to the appropriate specification, especially if you're going to be doing commercial rides in them. I mean, it's I don't think this is the end of the B-17 for us flying. I don't, because like I said in the show notes, I've seen some amazing things happen up at Basler with craftsmen and the original drawings, manufacturing parts with modern day manufacturing techniques and additive manufacturing, aka 3D printing. You can create almost anything nowadays, but it's just going to take a year or two to probably come up with that fix that the FAA likes.
So hopefully, fingers crossed, a fair wind and lots of hard work. Hopefully this is just a temporary grounding and we can see the B-17. I mean, part of me sort of like, as long as they could just fly it, I'm not even worried about, being able to do like commercial flights and stuff with it. Just to see the thing in the air is enough for me. I mean, I'm never going to be like a passenger of one, although that would be amazing. But like, just to get it certified so that they can still keep it in the air, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of history, is enough for me. I'd rather that than nothing. Do you know what I mean?
I agree with that.
Indeed. Well, that's pretty much it for the military then this week. Now, I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, but Carlos, you did something that I can only describe that nutty people do on a regular basis, and I've now got the video all loaded up here, he says, and now he's lost it. So I mean, I've been trying to avoid this and sort of like derail the show enough so that we don't have to talk about it. But essentially, I've run out of options. Nev, I tried my hardest, I promise. You've been doing lots of amazing flying with Armando. Obviously, you've been doing some amazing things, meeting up with some great people, and then, for a reason I can only best describe as you losing the, conscious thought or something like that, you decided that you were going to do a very crazy spare of the moment thing and go and do a parachute jump.
Yeah, well, it was mainly Dr. Steph's fault, I think. She was, obviously I was out with her for that day, and she said, well, I'm going over to Skydive Carolina. I'm going to jump out of a plane a few times. You need to try it. So I did. So I jumped into the car or the Jeep with Steph, and we drove over to Skydive Carolina and met the team there. A great team of people. Honestly, if you were nervous at all about doing a skydive, these guys I think they're trained in making you feel incredibly chilled before the event. So I got harnessed up in the stuff you wear and got on board the skydive plane, zoomed off up to 14,000 feet and attached myself to Chuck, one of the more senior skydive instructors there at the school. And me and Chuck proceeded to jump out of the aircraft at around about 14,000 feet and hurtle towards the ground at a fairly good rate of knots. And I have to say, right, when you initially jump, it's so noisy. It's incredibly noisy. The noise is unreal when you're flying through. But when that chute is pulled and the parachute deploys above you, it is as if someone switches the mute button on, and it is absolutely peaceful and serene up there at around, I think, about 5,500, 6,000 feet. I think it was when you pulled the cord. And the views are stunning. Now, I know you can see all this when you're in a GA aircraft, you know, you can see views like this, but when you are up there underneath a canopy with a complete 360 unrestricted view of the Earth, it is something else. And I just have to say thanks to all the team at Skydive Carolina, and also to Dr. Steph as well, who, as we all know, is literally an absolute legend at doing this thing. She actually jumped out just before me at the aircraft on her own, you know, doing a solo skydive.
You weren't nervous?
No, I wasn't. No.
You want to do it again?
100 times.
Awesome. Let me take a picture with Chuck. How was Chuck? Let me take a picture too of you. Thank you for jumping with us at Carolina. Boom, boom.
There we go. So, yeah, there you go. Well, I guess congratulations are in order. I guess it's just like, I don't really know what to do with it. I mean, you've done a crazy thing. Well done, you. Pat you on the back, and yeah, lovely. Sorry.
That you could warm up to the idea is what you could do.
No, that's not going to happen. No, the only way that would take place, Armando, and I'm not even joking when I say the only way that would happen is if it was a special pint of milk that I was given. That's the only way that would happen in my world. It's never going to happen.
Would
okay.
Remember that.
I think I have a plan. We just shouldn't tell Matt about it. But if we do the thing that the guy did that just got he's going to spend like 20 years in jail for crashing his Taylorcraft.
Anyway, it is 4 minutes to the end of the programme. Thank you very much to everyone who has joined us. It's time to start wrapping up, of course. Now, guys, so Carlos, when are you heading home? When's the end of the trip?
Tomorrow, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm flying back tomorrow evening here from Charlotte with good old American Airlines.
Very good, very good. Well, as I say, it's been an amazing time. I'm sure we'll hear lots more stories about it. Much planned for your last couple of nights?
Well, we're going to be having some drinks this evening.
Right, okay, yeah. Very good.
I put a pretty dent into my bar.
Right.
But no, actually, we were gonna do some skydiving, not actual skydiving, but I was gonna take Carlos up to my skydive place tomorrow morning. But I think we've already done a weather cam, so the winds in the morning are going to be up in the 20s and maybe even almost 30s, and then an overcast layer at 11 o'clock. So I think we're going to abandon the skydive idea for tomorrow and probably just go get donuts in the morning and. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Now, Nev, you've had what I can only describe as one hell of a week. Bless you. You're absolutely exhausted. What's on the agenda for you this week?
Luckily, not very much, I'm pleased to say, because I'm not going to go anywhere next week. Off to Sweden the week after, though. But just before we go, don't forget we've still got this lovely book to give away, Bolts from the Blue, by Sir Richard Johns. And the question, which we still need an answer to, we've had a couple of entries come in, but there's more to come, I think. The question is, what date did Sir Richard Johns start his flying career as a cadet at RAF Cranwell? It's a very specific date, obviously. So the question again, what date did Sir Richard Johns start his flying career as a cadet at RAF Cranwell? Next week we'll read out the answer and we'll pick a name out of the hat, and I shall go down to the post office and send this to the lucky winner. It's
a lovely looking book, to be fair, and also we don't mind, by the way. Google is your friend on this one. If you don't know, I'm pretty sure Google will tell you, so don't be afraid. You can win yourself a great book. It is a good read, by the way, so it's a great prize up for grabs on this one. Get your entries he's in podcast@planetalkinguk.com. That's podcast@planetalkinguk.com. While we're doing that, actually, don't forget, of course, our social media. You can search all our platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for Plane Talking UK. Those are all the details that you'll find there. As I say, that email address that I mentioned, it's podcast@planetalkinguk.com. That's podcast@planetalkinguk.com. We've also got our WhatsApp number, which Carlos is going to be having on his phone very soon, so make sure it's in there. His number is going to be +44 757 2249166. That's +44 757 2249166. And of course, if you want to find out more information about us, or how you can get in touch with the show, or how you can do all sorts of manner of things, the details you need to do with the show, it is our website, www.planetalkinguk.com. That's www.planetalkinguk.com. So I guess as they're out in the States, and Armando has been very, very tolerant of looking after Carlos for him, I guess we should leave our final words to them. You've only got a minute, just saying, okay?
Well, I'm going to say thank you to Armando for looking after me for the last week. It has been an absolutely epic visit. I couldn't have honestly wished for a better week here, weather-wise and company-wise, with Armando and the family as well. It's been fantastic. So thank you, Armando, for giving me what has probably been one of the most epic holidays I've ever had.
I wish I could do this for every single one of our hosts and listeners, to have a week filled with aviation of all different kinds. But I guess you'll just have to listen to the show.
Indeed, indeed. Nev, we'll leave the final word with you, shall we?
Yes, well, thanks very much indeed for watching and listening today. Thanks to the guys over in the US, near Charlotte. Been absolutely great to see you guys and all the stuff you've been doing. Have a great week and a great weekend. And if you're in the UK or some parts of Europe, it is a bank holiday weekend. So all the best for a nice, relaxing one. And the weather looks nice here too, so that'd be great. And take care. See you next week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.